special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and Fridays with Frank with our co-host Paul Hollis, author of the Hollow Man series, owner of Hollow Man Publishing, and Frank Fiore, our host of Fridays with Frank. Frank, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest today. How are you, Frank?
Doing well, doing well. Yes, we definitely want to see what Linda has to say.
All right. So our guest today is Linda Brenneman, and she is the author of the Pulitzer Saga. How are you? And thanks for stopping by.
Terrific. Thank you. And thank you, Neil and Frank, for having me. It's just a pleasure to be with you this morning or this
So, how
afternoon.
did you come up with the idea of writing this book?
Well, it goes back. I didn't really know very much about my family, and I wanted to explore my family roots. And what I found was an incredible treasure trove. And I decided, and I really didn't set out to write a book. I set out to really understand and connect with my family. And it just resulted in a book. So that's the origins.
Okay, go ahead, Frank, with your first question.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the history of the Jews. You go through the Habsburg monarchy in Hungary. We spent time in Hungary on a vacation, just for short, overnight, and we learned about the Habsburgs and what have you. But obviously, you could probably fill in a lot based on your own family's experience.
Yes. Well, I was able to go back and find 8 generations, and those, so it started in the 1700s. And of course, at that time, the Habsburg Empire was enormous and included Hungary and Czechoslovakia and so many countries, part of Poland, part of Ukraine. It was enormous, Austria. And so that's where my relatives originated. So yeah, it was
So
fascinating.
you actually have a family exhibit.
Yes.
Tell
Yeah.
us a little
So
about that.
yeah, so as a result of all the research, not only me, but I'll take it back a little bit. Um, what happened, and let me give you a little bit of background. So um my parents' house caught fire, and as a result of the fire, we found a box, and in that box was just a treasure trove of letters and photographs and documents, and they were all in Hungarian. So I needed to find a person who could help me research all of that, and I found a remarkable person in Hungary um, who was a lawyer and sociologist, and he helped me research my whole family. And we were able to go back, as I said, 8 generations. And as he was doing this research, he was working with the Hungarian Jewish Museum and Archives. And it just so happened at the time they had been part of renovating the Rambach Synagogue in Budapest, which was it's a beautiful, beautiful synagogue. And really hadn't been restored since World War II. So they decided that they wanted a permanent exhibit, and they chose my family to be the basis of that exhibit. So yeah, my family stories are in an exhibit in the Rambach Synagogue in Budapest.
Wow. And what has the feedback been so far about from people who have read your book, Linda?
They're just fascinated by it. What I did is when I learned my own family stories, I needed to do a lot of historical research. And so in the book, I try to put their stories in the context of what was going on in at the time, historical context. So people have found it really, they love the stories. The stories are fascinating. These people are just incredible. And they love learning about the history and history that even many Hungarians didn't know. So it's been quite a remarkable journey.
All right, go ahead, Frank, with the next question.
I can't, he's on mute.
You're on mute, Frank.
Oh, Frank, you're on mute. Okay, go, Paul, with your question for Linda.
Hi, Linda. This
Hi, Paul.
being an author, I understand how massive your research would be from just the genealogy sort of thing, and I was just wondering how you actually started to approach that.
Well, again, I really needed my Hungarian collaborator. His name was Andras Kaczynski. And without him, I couldn't have even approached it because all the documents that I had were in Hungarian and I didn't understand it. And I also didn't understand the context, what was going on in Hungary and in even going back 8 generations, what was going on in the Habsburg Empire. So, and we were a Jewish family. And it was the Pulitzers were from a town called Politz, which is now in the Czech Republic. And, the Jews of that day were just treated horribly. They weren't allowed to settle. They were taxed at exorbitant rates. If they made any money, they were only allowed certain professions and so on. So, so just trying to understand sort of how these people lived and in what circumstances they lived. It was a lot of reading and a lot of researching documents and then trying to put the pieces together. So, yeah.
I want to ask you a question. Why do you think the Jews have been persecuted all through the centuries here in the world? I mean, what is the big beef that people have with them? I mean,
I wish I wish I understood that. That's a question for, I don't know, all the philosophers and the historians and the so on. But what I really realized, from my own family stories, these were people that had started with nothing and had to work really hard. And one of the things they really understood is how important education was. So, for example, I'll give you an example. In the 1800s, one of my relatives is Abraham Pulitzer, and Abraham had 14 children, 10 boys and 4 girls. And he sent those, and he started, by the way, his father had been murdered by Napoleon soldiers. So he started as an orphan, and through education, he was able to create, quite a life for himself. He became quite wealthy, and he had these 14 children. And he sent all the boys, they were sent to Catholic school because at the time, Catholic schools, the priests had the best education possible. And Jews had to pay almost triple the tuition. But Jews still sent their sons there because they understood how important education was. So I think what has happened over time is Jews were educated. They tried to figure out what professions they could and were allowed to participate in. And I think there was a lot of jealousy. So, I don't know. I don't know the reasons, but.
Yeah, it's interesting why in history it's happened, and it continues to happen with now.
Continues.
And what are your thoughts from the
Absolutely.
book and people's feedback based on the current situation that's happening in Israel?
Well, again, I go back to, my mother, by the way, my mother was Catholic, and she was, I don't know if your listeners know what Righteous Among the Nations is. It's the highest honor that Israel gives to non-Jews who saved Jews during the Holocaust. So Oskar Schindler is, famous and so on. So my mother was honored as Righteous Among the Nations, and she saved my father and my grandmother among many other people that she saved. And what she always taught us was that we have to treat everyone the same, no matter what their skin color, no matter what their religion, their ethnicity, their economic status. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity and compassion. And I think that's what's sort of important nowadays to take to the public. Everyone, we're all created equal. We're all just people.
All right. Best place people can purchase your book and learn more about you. Where can they go?
They can go to my website, which is pulitzersaga.com. The book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the normal places. And they can also find a lot more information on my website. So yeah.
All right. That was a special simulcast of Fridays with Frank.